And welcome to the final edition of Krown Countdown U from the Shaw TV studio in Vancouver. I'm Jim Mullen. You know who these guys are. There's Andrew to one side, there's Gord to the other side. I think we're going to play it a little loose here through this final episode from here. We have the full intention of coming back somewhere else from some other studio in the future. We actually have a couple of options lined up. Oddly enough, one of those options would involve me flying back and forth to Regina 20 times a year.
I heard one of the other options would be me recording my parts in my underwear from my basement.
And nobody wants to see that, and that's too much information.
No. They love me in the prairies, man.
No, we need a green
want
screen.
more viewers, Gord, not less.
Hey, while we're here, let's talk a little bit about actual football. The East-West Bowl was earlier last month. We haven't had a chance to run the highlight package as of yet. Andrew, go ahead, dive into it.
Reigning Heck Crichton Award winner Noah Picton was the man for the West Side. Picton threw for 228 yards, tossed 2 majors, rushed for 1, while the West won 37-13. Picton was the West MVP. Bishop's Gators kicker Vincent Dubé scored all 13 points for the East. He was named the East MVP. And for the record, Jim, he's not related to our sponsor.
David Dubé? Well, maybe somewhere along the line.
Could be
like his family came from Quebec. There's probably some old connection there somewhere. Very, very common name.
Dubé roots somewhere along there.
Yeah. By the way,
that's a real recipe for winning a football game, by the way. Have your kicker kick.
Yeah.
What would that be? 4 field goals in a rouge?
Yeah.
Great.
That's very, very Canadian football.
Well, no, but it's an all-star game, and that's the challenge right now in terms of marketing the East-West game. These are kids that come together over about a 4-day period. They've got a very shallow playbook. There's not that much they can do with it. Execution's off. I like the fact that there's only 2 players per team assigned, but if they were really doing this right, they want to put the best teams together possible from the East and the West. And if that means leaving a few out along the way, well, then that's what you do.
Well, I think you adopt a modified format, something along the lines of what the professional leagues do with their all-star games, where you have, like the NHL, for example, you have your one representative from each team, and then you have more spots open to the most deserving candidates. I don't know that you want to go all the way over in that direction, because then you lose some of the lesser schools and you don't give those kids any chance to have that kind of exposure. So I think maybe the best option there is kind of a marriage of those 2 concepts a little bit.
Well, you know, I just long for the day where we can make sure that they don't have one kicker playing for both teams. Because seriously, they've done that in 2 previous ones.
Yeah.
And if they want people to actually come through the gate, I think they had 6,000 there in Laval for that game. You know, they need to make sure there's a structure in place, and don't necessarily, if you want to get your best players out there, don't necessarily confine it to the players that are going into their senior year. If you happen to have a second chance guy going into his 5th year, you know he's committed, looking for a chance at free agency in the CFL, maybe give that guy a second chance too, especially if you're weak in that position.
Allow guys to apply. I mean, the problem is that the sport of football itself does not lend itself well to an all-star game format, right? We see it at every possible level with every iteration of football all-star games, the Senior Bowl in the States, the East-West Shrine Game in the States, the Pro Bowl even, right? We see that same thing where it doesn't really resemble a full and complete football game. Even the pros are running just dives and really, really basic pared down playbooks, right? And so, I mean, there are some limitations that they have to figure out a way to work within and overcome with that as well.
Now, if you're just tuning into this edition of Krown Countdown, you must be asking yourself while we're playing it loose here, it is the last edition from the Shaw TV studio in Vancouver. This has been our home for the last 6 years. There are plans underway to move us to another platform, but this also gives us the opportunity to kind of look back on what we've, I think, managed to achieve here for Canadian University Sport, working independently from Canadian University Sport. And you were here in the early days, that first year. I mean,
take a look.
No, you don't want to
search it out on YouTube. Was it Canadian Count? Or what was it called?
Don't give them the title.
Yeah.
University Countdown, wasn't it?
No, we're not giving them the title.
Yeah.
Actually, Chad's posted those up. We don't have those shows posted up, so you really have to search. if you want to see some quality television from 2011.
That's quality with a KW.
Yeah, well, like Krown with a K, right?
Yeah,
there
exactly.
you go.
It works on a
Special
couple levels.
K. But anyway, you were there in the beginning, and I had this idea thanks to my alignment with the 2011 Vanier Cup, which I was the director. I think it was a very successful event here in Vancouver, and I think it led to even better things in 2012 in Toronto. It was mainly built as a show to promote a game that wasn't promoted at all in this market. And I think we've formed a very strong bond with football people in particular. I think we've been limited by the platforms somewhat to reach new fans, to be quite honest, and that's something that we're working on. But go back to the first year of this thing. Give people a recap. If you had to describe what the first year was, especially in comparison to this, with a set and Sean Olsen coming in and doing X's and Olsen, and
well,
it was pretty random. It was pretty rough.
Well, the set consisted of one table and a big black curtain, for one thing.
We had the Vanier Cup
and of
here.
course, you standing beside the Vanier Cup, which
acting like an
by
idiot.
the way, and for those that don't know, Jim had the Vanier Cup with him everywhere, like everywhere. He'd roll up to my house in his minivan, and the thing would be in the back seat, literally.
The minivan,
literally.
also known as the stink wagon.
Yes, also known as the stink wagon. I'm pretty sure you've eaten cereal out of it. You've probably pounded about 12 beers that I think you could probably put, you think 12 in there, maybe 6, 7?
Here's an interesting story about the Vanier Cup. I took it to the legislature in Victoria because I have a number of friends that work in communications departments there, just for the government and the opposition. And we had a football day there at the Ledge, and then we went to a restaurant across the way, restaurant/pub. And of course, there's a big, giant national trophy there, and everybody wants a drink out of it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right? So we buy a couple of bottles of champagne and some beer and start pouring it in the Vanier Cup.
I was going to say, I can speak from experience. You can fit a full bottle of champagne in there for sure.
That's right. Okay. And you can fit probably 2, because you don't realize that at the base of that Vanier Cup is a number of bolts and a number of nuts that don't have any washers on them. So
it pours right through.
It pours right through.
Yeah.
It's like a sieve.
Yeah.
So we've got the communication and the press people from the Ledge having a good old time. It's about 11 o'clock at this point. We've been having a good time that night, wearing the champagne, about 6 or 7 around from the Vanier Cup that is immediately leaked through the cup onto them. So
it's awkward to pick up though, because it's really wide at the bottom. So like to drink out of it, you kind of
it's almost a two-person job.
Yeah,
it's
totally.
a two-person job. It was much easier to do it with the Grey Cup. It's more built for those kinds of things.
What's the weight on the Vanier Cup? Because did you guys know the Stanley Cup's 35 pounds?
That's about the same
I
for the
did
Grey
not.
Cup.
The Grey Cup is light. The replica they have for the Grey Cup is made out of aluminum, and you can easily just toss it over your head. I got a great shot of me in 2011 when all the kids were doing it. I have a shot of me planking with the Grey Cup.
Planking, remember that?
Planking, 2011. But anyway, it was so light that you could, pose it here, pose it there. I think it's the second copy of the Grey Cup, actually, that makes it out to these events, right?
Well, current version of planking, by the way, is the fidget spinner.
Yeah, no,
I have no idea what that is.
I'm not
No
I'm
idea
not
what
on that.
I don't have kids.
I'm not on that. But the show has really developed over the last few years. Tell people what you do with the show, because people think that you just pop up and announce highlights. You do a little bit more than that.
Well, I look great in the red jacket, right?
Yes, you do.
But,
yes, you do. I forced you to wear that red jacket.
Well,
you wouldn't believe, folks, how much he complained about the idea of red jackets.
My mom told me growing up, as a ginger, you're not allowed to wear red. My mom said, you do not wear red. And of course,
you look good in the red
Jimmy
jacket.
had to, thank you. Jimmy had to convince me to do it. To say this show has progressed would be an absolute understatement. I mean, we started off with, like I said, one table, Jim, a black curtain. He would throw to me. I'm pretty sure we took that table of yours, slid it over to me, and then I did the highlights from there. But But I mean, it's been great what we've done, I think, at least in terms of exposing the sport, in terms of growing the sport, in terms of bringing new people into the sport, bringing new analysts like Gord here as well. It's grown leaps and bounds over the years. There's definitely been some red tape. Amateur sports in Canada has a lot of red tape in it, but I think we've progressed it to the point now that we're in the conversation, and now it's just time to take it to the next level.
Well, and the other thing, as an aside, that I'm pretty proud about is that, Chad Klassen was on in year one as part of the show. He's been an anchor for a number of years up in Kamloops and has a great career after this.
He's on the ballot for a Carsoni this year.
There you go. Richard Zussman, who's now the legislative reporter with CBC. He was with us for a couple of episodes, a big supporter of university football.
And some people might not know this, and if you remember my old colleague that used to share the desk with me, Ryan Sullivan, that's Sully from the Green Men. So remember the Canucks run back in 2011 for the Stanley Cup? The Green Men, the guys that were doing all the crazy stuff next to the glass, well, you behind the mask, that's Ryan Sullivan.
And he's doing some great work with the CFL as well, right?
Exactly. He does CFL.ca stuff right now. So, yeah, I mean, everybody seems to be growing. I mean, myself, I work for TSN Radio in Vancouver. And, of course, we've got the Krown Countdown U radio now it's across the whole network, really.
Mm-hmm. And also in Saskatchewan.
Also in Saskatchewan with the two stations that we're working with there as well. So, again, like I said, to say we've progressed would be an understatement, and we just seem to be leveling up every year. Let's hope we continue that.
Well, even since I've been here, I mean, watching the shows prior to me showing up, I think I came in season 3, is that right?
I believe it was season 3, yeah.
Season 3 or season 4, and I remember watching a couple of the episodes from before I showed up and cue up the Benny Hill theme song on one laptop and watch the show on the other laptop, and it fit really nicely.
What did Newsweek mention
that was
us
my first year,
in the story about Laval. For those that don't know, Newsweek magazine did a feature on Laval and basically said that they might be one of the greatest football programs in all of North America, and they mentioned Krown Countdown U. And what was the quote they gave about us? It was a cross between...
Don Cherry and the
No,
Mackenzie
it was Mackenzie Brothers and College Game Day.
Yeah,
it's what would have happened if Bob and Doug mated with ESPN College Game Day.
Yeah, and it's on the screen right now. You guys can see it, the image right there.
Yeah.
That's myself and Ryan Sullivan, my old co-host there, and we were absolutely stoked to be mentioned in Newsweek magazine in what was a very good article about the Laval program. And
I'll be honest, you guys were really entertaining.
Oh,
there's a part of me, I understand why we needed to be more serious, but there's a part of me that really misses that shtick, because the two of you guys working off each other was hilarious. I still remember one episode where you guys discovered there was a place called Dildo Newfoundland or something like that.
Hey everybody, welcome to Krown Countdown U. My name is Ryan Sullivan. That, as always, is Mr. Andrew Wadd. And a special welcome to our new viewers out in the Maritimes, in cities like Charlottetown, Halifax, South Dildo, Sackville, and Antigonish.
Oh, you really slid the names of those towns right in there.
Well, I guess Andrew's gone.
Au revoir, mon ami.
We're gonna go to break, come back with the round table. All by myself, don't wanna be all by myself.
Yeah, I mean, obviously at that time, Jay and Dan were big on the TSN network for television. And of course, they went down south and did their thing. I believe they're coming back. So me and Sully, we kind of, we're like, oh, we want to be like Jay and Dan. Now, don't get me wrong, those guys are legends and very, very hard to be as comedic as they are.
Yeah.
But that was the shtick, and of course, Jim gave us the rope to do it, but he had to haul us in a few times, and of course, what you mentioned was one of the times.
I think that one still made it to air, though, didn't it?
Oh, hell yeah.
Talk to me about logistics, because we have to work through a lot of logistics that most normal TV shows wouldn't have to go through.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, if you're dealing with universities, Graham Brown explains it to me. He says, I've got some ADs in three-piece suits and other guys in tracksuits.
Yep.
And we're dealing in CIS/U Sports football with all kinds of programs. I remember interviewing Kelly Jeffrey, who we have actually scheduled to be an additional panelist next year with some insight. When he was coach at Mount A, I said, Kelly, I can send this file to your sports information director. He goes, sports information director?
Yeah.
I guess I'm the sports information director.
Yeah.
So to pull highlights out of these schools from across 4 time zones and 2 official languages has its challenges, doesn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's like you said to me that, describe what I do on the show. Well, yeah, I'm on the show as, one of the anchors, but I'm also the one of the producers and also the video editor. I'm the guy that is contacting all these SIDs. Some schools are better than others. Let's just say that kindly.
Well, some don't want to cooperate.
And some don't cooperate. You're right. But I mean, it's really refreshing when you work with a school like, say, Laval, who are just like, it's almost like working with a professional organization in terms of, not only the product on the field, but the product off the field also is what makes them so great. You need highlights, boom, they're there that night. Are they HD quality? Yes, absolutely they are, and people think...
and a professional response.
Oh, absolutely.
Well,
like,
right?
I mean, if I email the SID at Laval, I've got a response within 30 minutes. These guys are, and it's like I said, I'm not trying to trash anybody. I'm just saying that there are some that are up here and there are some that are down here and there are some in the middle, and getting everybody to kind of move up a bit and understand that this is only going to grow if you allow it to. So you've got to do your part is something that's been kind of tough with these schools. But it's funny because when people watch the show, they probably don't realize that the kind of logistics that you have to go through just to get moving images on your television, which
that are watchable
in
in
2017 you'd
quality,
think would be a no-brainer, right? I mean, I know high schools down in the States that have better video programs than some of the schools we have to deal with. And again, I'm not trying to trash anybody. It's just that we all need to kind of look around and figure how we can get better.
I think one of the things that I've been trying to do over the last 6-7 years with this is form some sort of community, or like at least recognize a community that exists out there for football. Sometimes we bring some junior highlights into this. Sometimes we bring some Football Canada stuff into it as
NCAA
well.
stuff, yeah.
Some NCAA stuff on the radio as well. Going through the press box in Toronto, I was at the Argos exhibition game a couple of days ago. The response from football people, like people were walking up to me, and it's like sometimes you think you're doing this thing in a complete vacuum, and nobody's watching, and nobody's engaging with it, but people are. But it's concentrated to the football community.
Very much so, and I've had some experiences myself with examples like that, running into people who recognize you or who say, hey, like, you guys are doing a great job. But you're right, it's largely confined to the football circles. But I mean, I know for a fact that the players and their families really, really, really appreciate what we do, and we get a lot of really good support that way. And now, so next step, and you guys have kind of alluded to it, but next step is to try and grow beyond and expand the reach. And the CFL, like, we've seen that Canadian football can sell. So we've just got to figure out a way to pitchfork ourselves into that conversation, because I believe that the product we put out there, and I believe that the product, more importantly, that U Sports puts out there, is good enough to capture the attention of people if they just get the exposure to it.
Well, how do you create that beyond a little show like this, especially if it gets on to a more robust station or channel or distribution point? Beyond that, how do you go about it?
All expenses paid promotional tours for your best analysts.
We're working on it. We're working on it. David, do you hear him? Do you hear him? Yeah. All expenses paid.
We'll talk.
Yeah. How do you go about it? Like, okay, let's face it. I've been working on the Interlock project. It's hit a whole lot of turbulence. There's a whole lot of resistance out there to it in some quarters. There's a whole lot of support for it in others. Some schools see it as something that's completely necessary. Some schools don't even want to talk about it and engage with it. Is there the possibility in your guys' mind? I'm only at liberty to say so much, but is there some sort of opportunity maybe to take the national playoff that was being talked about, expanding those games, doing some sort of interlocking games that determine who those wild cards are. Do you think there's a possibility of doing that?
Oh yeah, of course there is. Now there's some unique challenges we've already alluded to when you were talking about the Mount A example. We've alluded to the fact that there are some very, very small institutions that are involved in this. So there are some challenges with logistics with that to think about. Like Mount Allison does not have the revenue producing capabilities of a Laval, right? And that's just the fact of the matter. But
They never will.
no, and they never will. But this can be put in place, and it needs to be eventually. Like we can't not see the top teams in the country ever cross over whatsoever. I mean, you and I have experienced, I guess all three of us have experienced this frustration putting together top 10 lists where we have no idea how the second best team in the Canada West fares versus the second best team in the Q.
Yeah.
Right? And so it like you need more exposure. Back to your original question, how do we grow this? There's a couple things. I mean, because it's so challenging, because it's always kind of been a niche sport in this country, you have to get creative. You have to try and experiment with a lot of different things. And one of the things that I think needs to be forefront for us, forefront for youth sports themselves, is to be on the cutting edge in terms of platforms. What new media ways can we get our product out to an audience? Things like social media streaming, things like that. We really have to try and be cutting edge with that because we need to be ahead of the curve because we're a niche product. Another thing that needs to be done, I believe, is it needs to start with the individual schools interacting better with their greater community. And I don't mean letting the students know on campus that there's an event going on and getting the students rallied up, because yes, they do need to do that, but the fact of the matter is they need to create more exposure for themselves within the greater community as a whole. You know, the Western Mustangs should be all over London all the time. You know, the UBC Thunderbirds should be all over Vancouver all the time. If there's an in vogue social issue in Vancouver, the UBC Thunderbirds should be out getting involved with it, right? And those are the types of things that, along the same line of thinking, universities need to be creative and need to be cutting edge with these things because they are pushing a niche product. And I think actually the biggest hurdle right now is admitting we are a niche product. We don't want to be a niche product.
Highly niche right
And we don't
now.
want to be a niche product anymore.
Yeah.
You know, and if you go to Saskatoon, though, right? Look around Saskatoon. You see Huskies everywhere, big billboards. And you did say Western, and I'll give Western one thing. Remember a few years ago, and we might have it, we'll pull it up if we do, the Will Finch Domino's Pizza ad.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? You never see that in Vancouver. No. Never. Travell Pinto selling,
Well,
you know.
and not coincidentally, you use Saskatoon as an example. Not coincidentally, where does the vast majority of our support come from? If you're to narrow it down to one province, it's Saskatchewan.
Yeah.
And the vast majority of criticism as well. So I just want to point that out, which is good because
That means they're listening.
The thing is that, and a lot of university administrators don't get this either, which is when people come back with a negative take. If we have a negative take, it's because it's from a place of passion and trying to be informed about the product, and that's one of the steps you use to engage fans in your product.
Absolutely.
You know, it's not rainbows for 27 teams.
Well, and that's one of the reasons why I always try and engage people who reach out to me on various social media platforms and things like that. I always try and give them the time of day, at least at first, because we want to encourage people interacting with the product. And you know, for those of you out there who don't know, my other profession is as a high school teacher, and that's a learning process. That's how you understand things, is you engage with it. You don't just sit there and receive information, you give it back. And that's how you learn about things. And so it's kind of the same process. It's one of the reasons why I always have the time of day when people reach out to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things too is that, you know, marketing is such a huge thing, and it's like you said, you can't just preach to the choir in terms of like sticking on your own campus. You've got to get it out there. A show like this gets it out there. College Game Day down in the States was not built in a day. It took them a while to create what now is college football in the United States. It's not even comparable between the two, but let's keep in mind that college football was not the big deal that it is now back in the day. It had to grow itself to be there, right? College Game Day now is a staple. Every weekend, every Saturday, you're watching College Game Day if you love college football in the States, and you know, that's what we want this show to be in Canada.
So after 6 years of doing this show on Shaw TV and 10 years of doing play-by-play on Shaw TV, we want to thank everyone that's in the room working with us right now in terms of the technical support staff, and Shaw itself. And we will have an announcement very soon for you on what the future is for play-by-play football and for this show, Krown Countdown U, on a national basis. But for now, let's get out to the game.
Krown Countdown U is supported by the Guelph Griffins. Agile, mobile, hostile.
Krown Produce secures produce locally and from around the world for Canadian retailers. Krown Produce is also proud to secure sponsorship of university football on Shaw. Krown Produce, supporting Canadian retailers and Canadian amateur football.